We are staring at a planet that should not be there, the closest exoplanet ever found, orbiting a star that flares like a cosmic flamethrower, a world possibly rocky, possibly scorched, possibly alive, swinging so close to its sun that a year lasts 11 days. And now, for the first time in human history, we have an eye powerful enough to taste its atmosphere from 4 light years away. James Webb doesn't look at Proxima B the way a telescope should. It listens. It waits for heat to whisper. And what it can and cannot tell us about this planet will decide how close we are to knowing whether we're truly alone. We start somewhere familiar: night sky, southern hemisphere, a faint red dot you can't see without help, Proxima Centauri, the nearest star beyond our Sun, 4.2 light-years away, close enough that, on a cosmic map, it's practically next door. If the Milky Way were the size of Earth, Proxima would be less than a centimetre from us. That's the scale. That's the intimacy. And hugging that star is Proxima B. Not drifting, not distant, hugging. It orbits 20 times closer to its star than Earth does to the Sun. Close enough that the star fills the sky. Close enough that gravity may have locked the planet so one face never sees night, and the other never sees day. Close enough that stellar flares, bursts of radiation and charged particles slam into the planet like a storm that never ends. This is not the kind of place we were supposed to hope for life. And yet, Proxima B sits right where hope refuses to die, the habitable zone, the narrow ring where liquid water could exist, where temperatures might allow oceans instead of vapour or ice, where, under the right conditions, chemistry can get ambitious. So we lean in. And James Webb leans with us. Webb is not a camera in the way we imagine cameras. It doesn't take pictures the way Hubble did. It is not interested in what things look like. It is interested in what they are made of. It reads heat. It splits light into fingerprints. It waits for atoms and molecules to betray themselves by the way they absorb and emit infrared radiation. From 1,000,000 miles away from Earth, Webb stares at Proxima Centauri and watches for something almost impossibly subtle, a tiny change in light when Proxima B moves, when it hides, when it reflects, when it glows. This is not looking at a planet. This is listening for a heartbeat through a wall. And here is the first hard truth, the kind we feel before we understand. Proxima B does not transit its star. It does not pass cleanly in front of Proxima Centauri from our point of view. There is no regular eclipse, no crisp silhouette, no easy dip in starlight that lets us slice the atmosphere layer by layer. That single geometric fact changes everything. Because most of what Webb does best reading atmospheres, detecting water vapour, carbon dioxide, methane, depends on transits, on backlit planets, on shadows we can analyse. Proxima B denies us that. So Webb has to work harder, and so do we. Instead of watching the planet block light, Webb watches for heat, for thermal emission, for the faint infrared glow of a rocky world being cooked on one side and frozen, or maybe not on the other. Webb watches as the planet swings around its star, looking for changes in brightness that reveal how heat moves across its surface. If Proxima B has no atmosphere, the day side should blaze and the night side should vanish into cold. If it has a thick atmosphere, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, something heavier heat could be carried around the planet, smoothing the extremes. That difference is not academic. It is the difference between a dead rock and a living system. Webb can detect that difference. Barely, because Proxima B is small, roughly Earth-sized, maybe a little heavier, and it is lost in the glare of a star that, despite being a red dwarf, is still millions of times brighter than the planet beside it. So Webb listens again, longer, patiently, accumulating photons the way archaeologists brush dust from bones. What it can tell us is indirect but powerful. It can tell us whether the planet likely has an atmosphere at all. That alone is enormous, because Proxima Centauri is violent. Red dwarfs flare, they erupt, they spit ultraviolet and X-rays with a frequency and intensity our sun never approaches. Early in its life, Proxima was even worse, stripping atmospheres, blasting surfaces, tearing molecules apart. For years, many assumed Proxima B must be bare, a scorched, airless stone, another near miss in the long list of cosmic disappointments. If Webb finds signs of heat redistribution if the night side glows warmer than it should, that assumption cracks. Not shatters, cracks. And cracks are where curiosity enters. What Webb cannot do is tell us everything we want to know. Not yet, not cleanly. It cannot image continents. It cannot see oceans. It cannot resolve clouds drifting over alien seas. It cannot tell us whether life is there. And it will not give us a headline that says Earth 2.0 confirmed. That is not how discovery works at the edge. What it can do is narrow the story, ruthlessly. Is there air or is there none? Is heat trapped or does it flee? Is the planet geologically alive enough to recycle gases or frozen into silence? Is it a world that resisted its star or surrendered to it? Every answer removes a universe of possibilities, and that is how we move forward. Because Proxima B is not just a planet, it is a test case, a boundary object, a rehearsal. If a world this close, this battered, this exposed can still hold an atmosphere, then the galaxy is more forgiving than we thought. If it cannot, then habitability around red dwarfs becomes a much narrower path. And red dwarfs are everything. 70% of the stars in the Milky Way are red dwarfs. Most planets we will ever find orbit stars like Proxima. If they are sterile by default, the universe becomes quieter. If they can host life despite the violence, the universe may be crowded beyond imagination. This is what Webb is really measuring. Not Proxima B alone, but the generosity of nature. And as we wait years of data, patient analysis, signals pulled from noise, we sit in a strange position. We are closer than ever to touching another world, yet still separated by light years and uncertainty. We are powerful enough to sense heat on a planet we will not visit for millennia, fragile enough that a single flare from Proxima would strip our own atmosphere bare. We are witnesses, not conquerors. And Proxima B turns, locked or not, glowing or dark, carrying answers we're only just learning how to hear. This is not the end of the question. It is the moment the universe leans in and says, listen carefully. If we lean closer, the story tightens instead of clarifying. Proxima B does not reveal itself all at once. It resists. It forces us to feel how narrow the channel of information really is when we look across interstellar space. We are not observing a world directly, we are reconstructing it from echoes. James Webb doesn't see Proxima B as a sphere. It sees a rhythm, a cycle, a faint rise and fall in infrared light as the planet moves through phases, like a moon that never quite becomes visible. When the day side turns toward us, heat leaks out. When it turns away, the signal drops. That difference, if it exists, is the planet speaking in the only language it has. And here the scale matters. Proxima B is smaller than the worlds Webb was designed to hunt. Webb's first triumphs were massive gas giants bloated with hydrogen, atmospheres puffed up and easy to read. Proxima B is compact, dense, tight-lipped. Its signal is thin, buried in stellar noise, tangled with the tantrums of a star that flickers and flares unpredictably. This is like trying to hear a whisper during a thunderstorm. So Webb does not rush. It returns again and again, building a composite reality from fragments. Each observation alone is ambiguous. Together, they begin to suggest boundaries, limits, what is possible and what is not. One of the most dangerous assumptions we bring with us is Earth-centrism. We imagine atmospheres like ours, nitrogen-dominated, oxygen-rich, buffered by oceans and plate tectonics. Proxima B owes us nothing of the sort. If it has an atmosphere, it may be thick with carbon dioxide hundreds of times Earth's pressure acting as armour against stellar radiation, or it could be thin but constantly replenished by volcanic outgassing, or it could be something stranger, an atmosphere dominated by oxygen not from life. but from water torn apart by radiation, hydrogen lost to space, oxygen left behind like a ghost. Webb can, in principle, detect carbon dioxide. It has already done so on worlds far larger and farther away. CO2 leaves a deep, unmistakable fingerprint in infrared light. If Proxima B has a dense CO2 atmosphere, Webb might catch it not as a clean detection, but as a statistical leaning, a bias, a suggestion that heat is being trapped. But water vapour, methane, oxygen. Here the wall rises. Without transits, those signals become elusive. Water vapour absorbs light in ways Webb knows intimately, but only when starlight passes through an atmosphere at the right angle. Proxima B denies that geometry. Methane is even harder, fragile under radiation, easily destroyed. Oxygen, paradoxically, may be abundant without meaning anything biological at all. So Webb's silence on these molecules would not be failure. It would be information, because absence narrows the field. If Webb sees no sign of heat redistribution, no atmospheric buffering, then Proxima B likely lost its air long ago, stripped by flares during the star's violent youth, left as a bare rock, with temperature swings that sterilize surfaces and shatter chemistry. If Webb does see redistribution, then the story bends. Because that means this planet held on through millions of years of radiation storms, through stellar tantrums that would have ended Earth's story early, held on tightly enough that gases remained, molecules collided, weather happened. Weather. That word alone carries weight. Clouds imply cycles, winds imply gradients, gradients imply energy flows that do more than destroy, they organize, and organization is the quiet precondition for complexity. Still, we must not let narrative outrun physics. Webb cannot tell us if Proxima B is pleasant. A thick CO2 atmosphere could mean a runaway greenhouse, surface temperatures high enough to melt lead, oceans replaced by supercritical fluids, a world alive in motion but hostile in every way that matters to us. Habitability is not comfort. It is persistence. And persistence under Proxima Centauri is an extreme sport. This star is small, about 1/7 the mass of the Sun, but it is dense, magnetic, volatile. Its habitable zone is so close that Proxima B is almost certainly tidally locked, one hemisphere forever facing the star, one forever turned away. Imagine standing at the terminator, the line between day and night, on one side, a sun that never moves, hanging bloated and red in the sky, on the other, eternal darkness, winds howling from hot to cold, ice trapped in shadow, vapour racing toward light. This configuration is not automatically lethal. Models suggest that with enough atmosphere or ocean coverage, heat can circulate, preventing atmospheric collapse on the night side. But those models depend on parameters we do not yet have. Webb does not give us maps. It gives us constraints. And constraints are how reality disciplines imagination. There is another layer here, quieter but more unsettling. Proxima Centauri is part of a triple star system. Alpha Centauri A and B orbit far away, golden and stable, visible to each other across the void. Proxima drifts around them, bound but distant. This means Proxima B lives in a gravitational environment that may have changed over time. Orbital eccentricities, past instabilities, long-term perturbations that could affect climate cycles, tidal heating, even internal geology. If Proxima B has a molten core, a magnetic field could shield it from stellar wind. If it does not, its atmosphere would erode faster. Webb cannot see a magnetic field. It can only hint at outcomes. Every answer Webb gives spawns better questions. This is not frustration. This is proximity. For the first time, we are pressing against the resolution limit of interstellar astronomy. We are no longer asking do planets exist, or even are there rocky ones. We are asking whether a specific named world can sustain complexity under pressure. And pressure is the theme. Pressure from radiation, pressure from gravity, pressure from our own expectations. We want Proxima B to be something definitive, a yes or a no, a beacon or a warning. Webb refuses that simplicity. It operates in gradients, in likelihoods, in ranges that force patience. But patience does not mean stagnation. Because even knowing that Proxima B is likely airless would be transformative. It would redraw the map of habitability. It would tell us that proximity is not enough, that closeness to us does not mean closeness to life. And if it does have an atmosphere, any atmosphere, then the universe has just admitted something profound. That life's raw ingredients are harder to erase than we thought. We are not watching a planet. We are watching resilience being tested at cosmic scale. And Webb, silent and steady, keeps listening as Proxima B turns again into the glare of its star. There is a temptation, once we get this close, to imagine arrival, to picture surface details, to let the mind land. But Proxima B refuses to be landed on. It exists for us as a set of forces in tension, and James Webb sits right at that tension point, measuring not beauty, but survival. Because even if Proxima B has an atmosphere today, the real question is how long it has kept it. Time is the silent axis of habitability. Proxima Centauri is old, older than the Sun, billions of years, and like most red dwarfs, its youth was violent. For hundreds of millions of years, it would have bombarded its planets with radiation intense enough to strip atmospheres wholesale. Any early oceans would have boiled. Any early chemistry would have been reset again and again. If Proxima B still has air, that means one of three things happened. Either the atmosphere was extraordinarily thick to begin with, or the planet continually resupplies it from within volcanoes, tectonics, internal heat, or it lost everything and rebuilt. That last option is the most unsettling, because rebuilding implies cycles, loss followed by recovery, a world not passively enduring but actively responding, geology as a counterpunch to stellar violence. Webb can't see volcanoes, but it can see their consequences. Carbon dioxide is not just a greenhouse gas, it is a geological signature. On Earth, CO2 is constantly exchanged between the mantle, the crust, the oceans, and the air. That exchange stabilizes climate over deep time. Without it, Earth would have frozen or burned long ago. If Proxima B shows signs of sustained CO2, it hints at internal heat, at a mantle that is not dead, at plates that may move, or at least crack and vent, at a planet that refuses to cool quietly. And that matters because red dwarfs live almost forever, trillions of years. If Proxima B can survive the early violence, it may enjoy stability longer than Earth ever will. This flips intuition on its head. We think of red dwarfs as hostile, but in deep time, they may be the universe's most reliable hosts. Webb sits at the edge of that realization. It also forces us to confront a more uncomfortable boundary, the limit of biosignatures. Even if Webb detects oxygen someday, even if it hints at methane, even if the chemistry looks tantalizingly familiar, Proxima B will still resist a verdict. Because around red dwarfs, false positives thrive. Ultraviolet radiation can split water molecules, flood atmospheres with oxygen, and mimic the signature of life without a single cell ever existing. Methane can be produced geologically. Carbon dioxide tells us about pressure, not biology. Life, if it exists there, may not announce itself the way Earth's does. It may be quieter, stranger, subsurface, shielded beneath ice or rock, invisible to telescopes no matter how powerful. Webb's role, then, is not to find life. It is to define where life could hide. That reframing is essential. Because Proxima B is teaching us how to read absence without despair. When Webb looks and finds limits, those limits sharpen our search elsewhere. They tell us which questions are premature and which are finally worth asking. There is another constraint Webb helps us feel, not calculate distance. 4 light years is nothing cosmically, but technologically, it is a wall. Even our fastest probes, launched with technologies we can barely imagine today, would take tens of thousands of years to arrive. Proxima B will remain a remote world for the foreseeable future. No landers, no flybys, no direct sampling. Everything we ever know about it will be inferred. That is not weakness. That is the condition of astronomy. We know the cause of stars we will never touch, the composition of galaxies we will never reach, the early universe we will never revisit. Proxima B is simply the nearest reminder that knowledge does not require proximity, it requires discipline. And discipline is what Webb enforces. It forces us to abandon cinematic expectations, to accept that discovery is incremental, cumulative, statistical. That certainty comes not from single revelations, but from narrowing corridors of possibility. Each year of data pushes Proxima B toward one side or the other of a fundamental divide, barren or buffered. And that divide echoes outward. Because Proxima B is not unique in architecture. Close-in rocky planets around red dwarfs are everywhere. The galaxy is full of worlds packed tightly around dim stars, locked in gravitational embraces, enduring radiation, negotiating survival. What we learn here will be projected onto thousands of others. This is why every fraction of a degree matters, every constraint on albedo, every hint of heat transport. We are calibrating our expectations for the most common planetary environments in existence. And there is something quietly humbling in that. For centuries, we assumed the universe was built around stars like the Sun, stable, yellow, forgiving. Webb is revealing a cosmos where those stars are the exception, not the rule, where habitability, if it exists, must often emerge under stress. Proxima B is the stress test. As Webb watches, Proxima Centauri continues to flare. Bursts of energy slam into the planet, lighting up auroras if a magnetic field exists, stripping particles if it does not. The planet's fate is written not in snapshots, but in averages over time. Webb's data does not capture drama. It captures endurance. And endurance is the deeper story of life. Life does not need paradise. It needs persistence, gradients that last long enough, energy flows that don't collapse instantly, a chance to adapt faster than conditions destroy. Whether Proxima B offers that chance remains unresolved, but the fact that we can even pose the question seriously, scientifically, with instruments sensitive enough to test it, is already a transformation. We are no longer guessing about nearby worlds. We are interrogating them. And Proxima B, silent and close, is the first to feel that pressure. Not as a destination, but as a mirror. A world that forces us to confront how fragile atmospheres are, how violent stars can be, and how stubborn matter must be to organize itself against the odds. Webb does not promise answers that comfort us. It promises answers that refine us. And Proxima B, circling its star every 11 days, continues to offer itself as the nearest proof that the universe's most important stories are written not in extremes alone, but in what survives them. As the picture tightens, another illusion falls away, the idea that proximity equals clarity. Proxima B is close in distance, but extreme in conditions, and those extremes distort everything we try to read. James Webb is not just fighting faint signals, it is fighting a star that refuses to sit still. Proxima Centauri is not a calm backdrop. It flickers, it pulses, it flares without warning. In infrared light, the star breathes brightening, dimming, throwing off false signals that can masquerade as planetary heat. Every flare forces astronomers to pause, subtract, recalibrate. Is that extra warmth coming from the planet's dayside, or from the star erupting again? This is where Webb's power becomes less about sensitivity and more about patience. Over months, over years, patterns emerge, stellar noise averages out, planetary rhythms persist. The planet's orbit is clockwork, 11.2 Earth days. Again, again, again. That repetition is a gift. It allows Webb to stack observations, aligning them until the star's chaos blurs and the planet's presence sharpens. If Proxima B has an atmosphere, it will betray itself through consistency. A stable offset in infrared brightness, a night side that refuses to freeze completely, a thermal inertia that cannot be explained by bare rock alone. And here the narrative becomes uncomfortable again. Because even a detected atmosphere does not mean surface habitability. A thick atmosphere could be crushing hundreds of atmospheres of pressure, temperatures beyond boiling, chemistry dominated by carbon dioxide and sulfur compounds. A world more like Venus than Earth, except locked in permanent twilight and daylight. Webb cannot tell us if you could stand there. It can only tell us if anything stands between the surface and space. That distinction matters, because an atmosphere is not a promise of life. It is a prerequisite for complexity. Without it, chemistry is exposed, stripped, scattered. With it, even hostile conditions can stabilize into something long-lived. What Webb is really doing is measuring forgiveness. How forgiving is the universe to small rocky planets near violent stars? Proxima B is our first real answer attempt. There is another dimension Webb brushes against but cannot cross clouds. On Earth, clouds dominate climate. They reflect light, trap heat, move energy sideways and upward on a tidally locked planet. Clouds could pile up at the substellar point, the eternal noon creating a reflective shield that cools the surface below. Models suggest this is possible, even likely. But Webb cannot see clouds directly on Proxima B. Not yet. At best, it might infer them indirectly, through muted temperature contrasts or unexpected brightness patterns. Clouds, here, are ghosts. And ghosts matter, because they complicate everything. A cloudy planet could be cooler than expected, more stable, less hostile. Or clouds could trap heat and drive runaway warming. Same mechanism, opposite outcomes. Webb can narrow which stories survive contact with data, but it cannot write the ending. That responsibility remains ours. And there is a deeper reason this matters beyond Proxima B itself. We are learning how to read rocky planets at the limit of our technology. Everything about Proxima B, the lack of transits, the stellar noise, the weak signal represents the hardest case. If we can extract meaning here, we can extract it almost anywhere. This is rehearsal for the future. Because future telescopes, larger mirrors, interferometers in space, starshades will build on Webb's lessons. They will inherit its constraints, its strategies, its scars. Proxima B is shaping how the next generation of instruments will be designed. In that sense, this planet is already influencing human engineering. Not by being friendly, by being difficult. And difficulty forces evolution. There is also the question of oceans. Water is the talisman of habitability, the molecule we circle obsessively. Webb cannot see liquid water on Proxima B, not directly. But water leaves fingerprints even when hidden through vapour, through climate effects, through heat capacity. An ocean-covered planet redistributes heat differently than a dry one. Water stores energy, it slows temperature swings, it moderates extremes. If Webb sees smoother thermal curves than rock alone can explain, oceans become plausible. Not proven. Plausible. And plausibility is power. Because once oceans enter the picture, even hypothetically, the narrative shifts. Oceans imply solvent chemistry, circulation, interfaces where complexity loves to grow. They imply a world not just resisting destruction, but organizing energy flows into patterns. Patterns are the universe's quiet rebellion against entropy. Still, we must be honest about the brutality of Proxima's light. Ultraviolet radiation would batter the surface. X-rays would penetrate shallow waters. Life, if present, would need shielding depth, rock, ice, chemistry adapted to punishment. This would not be Earth-like life basking under blue skies. This would be life as a survival strategy. And that matters because it expands our definition of what counts. For decades, we asked whether other planets are like Earth. Proxima B is forcing us to ask whether Earth is just one successful strategy among many. Webb cannot answer that question alone, but it is the first instrument capable of making it non-speculative. And so the wait continues. Observations accumulate. Papers argue quietly in the background. Signals flirt with significance and retreat. Headlines oscillate between hype and restraint. But beneath the noise, something irreversible is happening. We are transitioning from the era of exoplanet discovery to the era of exoplanet discrimination. Not is there a planet, but what kind of planet survives here? Proxima B is the nearest battlefield of that question. And we, 4 light-years away, are learning humility from a world we cannot touch, cannot see directly, and cannot yet understand fully. James Webb does not give us certainty. It gives us friction. And friction is how understanding sharpens. As Proxima B continues its tight orbit, locked in its gravitational embrace, it forces us to confront the limits of both optimism and pessimism. It refuses to be a miracle. It refuses to be a disappointment. It insists on being real. And that insistence, measured in infrared photons drifting across interstellar space, is already changing how we think about life, resilience, and the kinds of worlds that might be waiting, quietly enduring, around the most common stars in the galaxy. At this point, something subtle but important shifts. The question stops being whether James Webb will discover Proxima B and becomes whether we can accept what discovery looks like at this distance. Because the closer we get to truth, the less it resembles revelation and the more it resembles constraint. Webb does not hand us a planet, it hands us a boundary. One of the hardest boundaries is albedo, how reflective Proxima B is. This seems like a minor detail. It is not. Albedo decides whether a planet bakes or survives. A bright world reflects stellar energy back into space. A dark world absorbs it and heats up. On Earth, ice caps, clouds, oceans, and forests all conspire to tune this balance. On Proxima B, the tuning could be extreme. If the day side is covered in reflective clouds or ice, temperatures could be far lower than simple distance calculations suggest. If it is dark basalt or lava plains, it could absorb energy relentlessly. Webb can't see colour, but it can infer reflectivity through how much energy comes back out as heat. This is indirect, fragile, and powerful. Because once you estimate albedo, climate models either hold together or collapse. A low albedo Proxima B with no atmosphere is almost certainly uninhabitable. A high albedo Proxima B with a thick atmosphere and clouds could sit in a stable thermal regime for billions of years. Same orbit, same star, completely different outcomes. Webb is the referee between these possibilities. And then there is mass. We know Proxima B's minimum mass from radial velocity measurements. It tugs on its star just enough to reveal itself, but minimum mass hides a range, depending on orbital inclination. Proxima B could be only slightly more massive than Earth, or several times heavier. That difference determines gravity. Gravity determines atmospheric retention. A heavier planet holds onto gases more easily, resists stripping, maintains pressure. Webb cannot measure mass directly, but it can help us infer consequences. If Proxima B appears to retain heat too effectively, high gravity becomes likely. If its thermal signal drops sharply on the night side, low gravity and atmospheric loss rise in probability. Again, Webb narrows, never declares. There is also the question of surface renewal. On Earth, plate tectonics recycle carbon, reshape continents, generate magnetic fields indirectly through core dynamics on a planet slightly more massive than Earth. Tectonics could be stronger, or it could lock up entirely, forming a stagnant lid. Both scenarios are plausible. Both lead to radically different futures. Webb cannot tell us if plates move, but it can tell us if the atmosphere looks ancient or replenished. An atmosphere dominated by carbon dioxide without much nitrogen could suggest volcanic dominance, One with a broader mix hints at long-term cycling. These are faint clues, but they matter. Because habitability is not a moment. It is a process. And processes leave scars. Proxima B's scars are written in its light. What makes this moment unusual is not that we are unsure. We have always been unsure. It is that our uncertainty is now bounded by observation rather than imagination. For centuries, the nearest stars were abstract. Proxima Centauri was just another red point. Proxima B turns it into a system, a place with weather or without, with air or none, with a past we can model and a future we can extrapolate. We are, for the first time, treating a neighbouring planetary system with the same seriousness we once reserved for Mars. Except Mars is forgiving. Proxima B is not. There is another dimension to Webb's silence that deserves attention. Habitability may not be surface-based at all. On worlds hammered by radiation, life could retreat underground, beneath kilometres of rock or ice, subsurface oceans, heated by tidal forces or radioactive decay, could persist regardless of surface hostility. Webb cannot see underground. And that limitation is not a failure, it is a reminder. Our instruments are tuned to life that advertises itself. Earth advertises life loudly: oxygen, methane, vegetation-changing reflectance. A world that hides life will not cooperate. Proxima B may be such a world. If Webb finds nothing, no atmosphere, no redistribution, no hint of stability, it does not erase the possibility of life. It merely pushes it out of reach. That distinction is uncomfortable, but honest. And honesty is what makes this science mature. Because at some point, we must confront a deeper question: what would satisfy us? Is an atmosphere enough? Is water enough? Is long-term stability enough? Or do we secretly demand familiarity? Blue skies, gentle suns, seasons we recognize. Proxima B will not give us that comfort. It offers a harsher lesson. That life, if it is common, may often arise in places we would never choose. And that our definitions of habitable are biased by our origin story. Webb, by forcing us to engage with Proxima B on its own terms, is expanding that story. There is a quiet drama in watching this unfold. Data trickles in, models compete, confidence grows in some areas, collapses in others. The planet itself remains unchanged, indifferent to our scrutiny. And yet, it is changing us. Because we are learning to live with partial answers that are still meaningful, to find satisfaction not in certainty, but in narrowing the unknown. This is not resignation. It is a higher resolution of curiosity. Proxima B will never be a postcard world. It will never be an easy headline. It will never resolve into a single word like yes or no. It will remain a boundary object marking where our reach currently ends and our ambition begins. And James Webb, orbiting far from Earth, continues its work not as a revealer of secrets, but as a sculptor of possibility. Each photon it catches from that nearby system is a chisel strike, removing what cannot be true, leaving behind what might be. And in that negative space in what survives elimination, we are learning how to think about life not as a miracle reserved for comfort, but as a phenomenon that endures, adapts, and sometimes hides, even under stars that seem determined to erase it. Proxima B does not promise company, but it forces us to ask better questions about what company would even look like. And that, quietly, is one of the most transformative shifts James Webb has already delivered. By now, the tension is no longer about data, it's about perspective. Proxima B has dragged us into a place where the usual emotional shortcuts fail. Hope doesn't land cleanly. Disappointment doesn't either. The planet sits too close, too real, too constrained to support fantasy and too resilient, perhaps to support dismissal. And that tension exposes something about us. We didn't build James Webb just to look farther. We built it to look harder, to press against the limits of inference and see what breaks first: our instruments or our assumptions. Proxima B is where assumptions are breaking. For decades, The habitable zone was treated like a promise, a ring drawn around stars, coloured green in diagrams, implying safety. Proxima B sits squarely in that ring, and yet everything about it feels unsafe. Radiation storms, tidal locking, stellar volatility, geometry that denies easy observation. The habitable zone, it turns out, is not a guarantee. It is a challenge. Webb forces us to confront that challenge without flinching. It strips away the comforting simplifications and replaces them with gradients marginally stable, conditionally viable, intermittently hostile, words that don't sell posters, but describe reality. And reality here is shaped by energy. Proxima B is bathed in energy, but not the gentle, broadband sunlight Earth enjoys. Its star emits most of its output in infrared, with spikes of high-energy radiation layered on top. Photosynthesis, if it exists there, would not look like ours. Chemistry would adapt or fail. Pigments would be tuned to red light, if light is used at all. Webb cannot see pigments, but it forces us to imagine worlds where biology, if present, would be almost unrecognizable, not exotic for the sake of strangeness, but optimized for survival under red suns. This is where narrative discipline matters. It would be easy to turn Proxima B into a symbol of alien life, equally easy to declare it sterile and move on. Webb allows neither. It holds us in suspension. And suspension is uncomfortable because it denies closure while still demanding attention. There is a human reflex to resolve uncertainty quickly, to collapse probability into story. Proxima B resists that reflex. It stretches uncertainty across years of observation, across careers, across generations of instruments. That stretch teaches patience, but it also teaches humility. Because even if Webb ultimately shows that Proxima B is airless, baked, hostile beyond redemption, the lesson will not be we failed. The lesson will be proximity is not privilege. The nearest planet beyond our solar system may be utterly unwelcoming. Life, if it exists elsewhere, may not be waiting conveniently close. The universe owes us nothing, not even reassurance. And yet, that outcome would sharpen our search rather than dull it. Because constraints are not dead ends. They are maps. Every no from Proxima B would outline where yes becomes more likely, farther out, around quieter stars, or perhaps still around red dwarfs, but under conditions we have not yet considered. Conversely, if Webb continues to just hint that Proxima B has retained an atmosphere, redistributed heat, stabilised despite the odds, then a different map emerges. A map where endurance matters more than comfort. A map where life's footholds are not rare because the universe is hostile, but because life is selective, choosing niches that reward persistence over ease. That idea is unsettling. It means the universe may be full of worlds that are alive in ways we're not prepared to recognise. Proxima B sits right at the edge of that recognition. It is close enough to feel personal, harsh enough to challenge optimism, ambiguous enough to demand rigour. James Webb, in this context, is not a telescope. It is a filter. It filters out narratives that cannot survive contact with physics. It leaves behind only those stories that respect constraint, scale, and time. And time is the quiet giant here. Red dwarfs like Proxima Centauri will burn for trillions of years. Earth has maybe 1 billion years left before increasing solar luminosity destabilizes our climate permanently. If life ever took hold on Proxima B, or could in the future, it might have vastly more time than we do. That inversion is profound. The universe may favour longevity over gentleness. Webb cannot prove that, but it makes it plausible. And plausibility, again, is power, because it reshapes where we aim our curiosity. We are no longer asking, where are Earths? We are asking, where can complexity survive? Those are different questions. Earth-like conditions may be rare. Survivable conditions may be common. Proxima B is forcing us to separate those ideas. As Webb continues to observe, The planet remains indifferent. It does not respond faster because we care. It does not simplify itself for our benefit. It continues to orbit, flare-battered, tidally bound, quietly existing as it always has. And that indifference is clarifying. It reminds us that science is not a dialogue between equals. It is an interrogation of reality, conducted with instruments, patience, and restraint. We do not get answers because we deserve them. We get answers because the universe leaves traces and we finally know how to listen. Proxima B's traces are faint, incomplete, frustrating. But they are enough to matter. Enough to redraw the emotional boundary of what nearby means. Enough to challenge the idea that habitability is a checklist rather than a spectrum. Enough to teach us that not knowing everything does not mean knowing nothing. James Webb is not revealing Proxima B as a destination. It is revealing it as a limit case. A world that sits at the intersection of hope and hostility, teaching us how narrow and how wide the path to persistence might be. And as that lesson settles, one thing becomes clear. Whatever Proxima B ultimately is, it is no longer just an exoplanet. It is the closest reminder that the universe does not need to be welcoming to be meaningful. It only needs to be real. And real, here, is more than enough to hold our attention. At this distance, 4 light-years, one red star away, the story stops being about Proxima B alone and starts becoming about how civilizations learn. Not technologically, cognitively, emotionally. About how far a species can push meaning when direct experience ends. Because Proxima B is the first planet close enough to feel reachable, and yet remain completely unreachable. That tension is new. Mars is close enough to dream about boots on the ground. Europa is close enough to imagine probes melting through ice. Even Titan feels like a future engineering problem. Proxima B is none of those things. It is too far for touch, too close for abstraction. It occupies a psychological middle distance humanity has never dealt with before. James Webb is the instrument that forced that confrontation. Every photon Webb collects from Proxima B left the planet before our recent history even began. Before cities, before writing, before agriculture. That light crossed interstellar space while humans were still learning how to be human. And now it ends its journey on a mirror we built, aligned with nanometer precision, orbiting a point in space chosen deliberately to escape Earth's noise. That is not just engineering. That is intention stretched across time. And Proxima B is the first nearby world to receive that intention fully. Which means we're no longer speculating about neighbours. We are surveilling them. Quietly, patiently, and without permission. And that changes the emotional contract between us and the universe. For centuries, astronomy was passive. We looked, we recorded, we wondered. Webb marks a shift to active constraint building. We're no longer asking what could be in a vacuum. We're asking what survives this under real stellar conditions. Proxima B is a stress chamber for imagination. Every hopeful narrative must now pass through it. If we imagine life everywhere, Proxima B asks, even here. If we imagine life as fragile, Proxima B asks, then why do so many planets form around stars like this? If we imagine Earth as typical, Proxima B simply exists and waits for us to correct ourselves. James Webb doesn't answer those questions directly. It forces coherence. It makes it impossible to hold mutually incompatible beliefs without tension, and tension is productive. Tension sharpens inquiry. This is why Proxima B matters even if it is dead. Especially if it is dead. Because a dead Proxima B would not mean the universe is empty. It would mean the universe is specific, selective. That habitability is not a default outcome of planet formation, but a negotiated truce between geology, atmosphere, star, and time. And negotiated truces leave patterns. Patterns we can learn. Patterns Webb is already teaching us to recognize. The real breakthrough here is not atmospheric detection or thermal curves, it is epistemic maturity. We are learning how to sit with constrained uncertainty without collapsing into fantasy or nihilism. That may sound abstract. It isn't. Because the same discipline applies everywhere: climate modelling, future AI, long-term survival, planetary stewardship. Proxima B is training us in a way of thinking where optimism must coexist with realism, where hope is allowed but only if it respects physics. Webb enforces that rule mercilessly, and that is why its silence on certain questions is not failure, it is boundary maintenance. When Webb cannot tell us if Proxima B has oceans, it is telling us something about the universe's opacity. When it cannot confirm biosignatures, it is reminding us that life does not owe us legibility. Those reminders matter, because as our instruments grow more powerful, the temptation to overinterpret grows with them. Proxima B is inoculating us against that temptation early. It is teaching us restraint at the edge of capability. There is also something quietly radical about the timeline this planet invites us into. If Proxima B is stable now, it may remain stable for trillions of years, long after Earth is uninhabitable, long after the sun swells and erases our current home, long after our species changes or disappears. Proxima B could outlast us, not as a civilization, not as a destination, as a stage where complexity could persist. That thought rearranges scale. We are used to thinking of ourselves as latecomers, temporary, a brief spark. Proxima B suggests that the universe's most enduring habitats may not look anything like Earth, and may not be centered on stars like our Sun at all. Webb cannot confirm that future, but it has made it thinkable, and thinkable futures shape action. Already, mission concepts are shifting. Future telescopes are being designed with red dwarf systems in mind. Techniques refined on Proxima B will be applied to dozens, then hundreds of nearby worlds. This planet is not an endpoint. It is a calibration point. A hard one. The hardest one we could have started with. And that is fitting. Because easy wins breed overconfidence, difficult cases breed competence. Proxima B is forcing us to earn every inference. And in doing so, it is quietly redefining what discovery means. Discovery is no longer a moment. It is a narrowing, a convergence, a slow compression of uncertainty until only a few viable stories remain. James Webb is the instrument of that compression, and Proxima B is where we first feel it in full. Not as spectacle, as pressure. Pressure on our models, pressure on our expectations, pressure on our emotional need for resolution. But here is the quiet payoff. Even without certainty, even without confirmation of life or habitability, Proxima B has already delivered something rare. It has made the universe feel structured rather than arbitrary. Harsh, but rule-bound. Difficult, but navigable. It has shown us that questions can be meaningful even when answers remain out of reach if the constraints are real. That is a profound upgrade from myth to method, from wonder to disciplined awe. We are no longer staring into the dark hoping for a miracle. We are mapping the darkness and learning where miracles would actually be allowed to occur. Proxima B is not inviting us to dream wildly. It is inviting us to dream precisely. And that invitation extended across 4 light years, carried on infrared photons older than civilization, is one we are finally equipped to accept. Not because we are certain, but because we are ready to keep watching without needing the universe to reassure us. James Webb will continue to listen. Proxima B will continue to exist. And between those two facts, a new kind of cosmic relationship has already begun, one where meaning does not depend on proximity, life does not require familiarity, and awe survives contact with limits. That relationship is not dramatic. It is durable. And durability, in a universe like this, may be the most extraordinary property of all. By the 8th pass, something else becomes clear. The drama is no longer in what Proxima B might be, but in what it is forcing us to become in order to study it. The planet is stable. We are the ones in motion. James Webb does not just observe Proxima B, it teaches us how to look when vision is almost impossible. Because this is the first time in history that humanity is attempting to characterize a potentially habitable, Earth-sized planet around another star without the crutch of favourable geometry. No transits, no silhouettes, no clean spectra, just inference under fire. That difficulty is not an accident of fate. It is a preview. Most nearby Earth-sized worlds will not transit. Most will orbit active stars. Most will demand exactly this level of interpretive restraint. Proxima B is not a special exception. It is the prototype of the hard majority. And Webb is our first serious attempt to meet that majority honestly. So what exactly does Webb really give us here? It gives us upper bounds and lower bounds that carve reality into a narrow canyon. It tells us how reflective the planet cannot be, how dark it must at least be, how efficiently heat must move or fail to move across its surface. It tells us how thick an atmosphere could be before it contradicts observed thermal curves. It tells us how thin it must be if night-side cooling is extreme. These are not poetic details. They are survival thresholds. And survival thresholds are the scaffolding of habitability. Once those thresholds are established, entire classes of planets drop out of consideration. Airless rocks, runaway greenhouses, flash-frozen spheres. The viable middle, however small, becomes visible. This is the moment where science quietly overtakes speculation. Not with answers, with exclusion. Exclusion is powerful because it is cumulative. Each ruled-out scenario tightens the remaining possibilities. Over years, what was once a broad fog becomes a narrow beam. That beam is now pointed at Proxima B. And the beam reveals something uncomfortable even in the best-case scenario. This planet would be extreme by Earth standards. Light levels are low, radiation is high, day and night are permanent, climate, if it exists, is anchored to a fixed geometry. There are no seasons, no sunsets, no familiar rhythms. This is not a world that invites nostalgia, and that is precisely why it matters. Because if life can exist, there persist, adapt, organize, then life is not an Earth story that happened once under lucky conditions. It is a strategy that can operate under constraint. Webb is not confirming that strategy yet, but it is mapping the battlefield on which the strategy would have to operate. And the battlefield is harsh, which raises a deeper question we can no longer avoid. Are we emotionally prepared for life that does not resemble us? Not visually, not chemically, not culturally. Proxima B is the first nearby planet that forces that reckoning without romance. No lush visuals, no imagined blue oceans under twin suns, just a tight orbit around a volatile star, measured in infrared and probability. If life exists there, it will not be cinematic. It will be functional. And that reframing is essential. Because we are entering an era where discovery will increasingly challenge human preference. We prefer worlds that look like home. The universe may prefer worlds that simply last. Proxima B is aligned with the universe's preference. James Webb, by refusing to dramatize, is aligning us with it too. There is also a subtle inversion happening in how we think about closeness. Proxima B is the nearest exoplanet, yet it feels more alien than many worlds farther away. Gas giants with dramatic transits feel familiar in their behaviour. Proxima B feels opaque, guarded, private. Closeness, it turns out, does not equal intimacy. Understanding requires cooperation from reality. And Proxima B does not cooperate easily. That resistance is instructive. It reminds us that the universe is not obligated to be legible on our terms. That knowledge is earned, not granted. That even with mirrors the size of houses and detectors cooled to near absolute zero, we are still guests in someone else's domain. Guests who must infer rules by watching patterns. And patterns are what Webb is best at extracting. Over time, as data accumulates, patterns emerge that cannot be hand-waved away. A persistent warmth, a recurring asymmetry, a statistical tilt that favours one climate regime over another. Each pattern is a quiet statement. Not this is what Proxima B is, but this is what it cannot avoid being. And inevitability is more powerful than revelation. Because inevitability tells us how the universe behaves when left alone. Proxima B, left alone for billions of years, has either maintained stability or failed catastrophically. Webb is helping us determine which outcome nature favours under these conditions. That outcome will echo far beyond this one planet. It will inform how we interpret the thousands of red dwarf worlds already catalogued. It will shape which systems future telescopes prioritise. It will influence how seriously we take the possibility of long-lived biospheres around the most common stars in the galaxy. In that sense, Proxima B is not just nearby. It is central. Central to a shift in cosmic expectations. Before Webb, we could imagine habitability almost anywhere and dismiss failure as ignorance. After Webb, ignorance is shrinking, and with it, fantasy. But what replaces fantasy is not despair. It is precision. Precision awe. The kind of awe that does not rely on beauty or comfort, but on endurance, constraint, and improbability made real. Proxima B may or may not host life, but it is already hosting something else, a turning point in how a technological civilization relates to nearby worlds. Not as destinations, not as mirrors, but as test cases for reality itself. James Webb continues to watch. Proxima B continues to orbit. And between those two motions, one engineered, one natural, a new narrative is taking shape. A narrative where wonder survives without illusion, where curiosity does not demand payoff, and where the universe earns our respect not by being kind, but by being consistent. That consistency is what allows us to keep going, to keep listening, to keep narrowing, and to accept that sometimes the most profound discoveries are not about what we find, but about how much reality we are finally willing to let in. At this stage, the question we are circling is no longer what will James Webb tell us about Proxima B. It is what kind of truth are we actually equipped to receive, because Proxima B is forcing a confrontation between curiosity and patience, between desire and discipline. This planet is close enough to tempt us into urgency. 4 light years feels like a gap we should be able to close, but Webb keeps teaching the same lesson over and over. Distance is not just space, it is information density, and information density drops faster than intuition expects. What reaches us from Proxima B is not a story, it is a residue. A faint excess of infrared photons, a curve that bends slightly when it shouldn't, a night side that cools slower than bare rock would allow, or faster than any atmosphere could tolerate. These are not answers, they are pressures on our models. And models under pressure reveal what we secretly assumed. For years, we assumed atmospheres are either present or gone. Proxima B suggests a continuum, partial loss, episodic replenishment, an atmosphere that may collapse during stellar storms and recover afterward, a climate that breathes on timescales longer than a human lifetime but shorter than geological eternity. Webb cannot watch those cycles directly, but it can catch their fingerprints. A planet that occasionally loses atmosphere would show variability, subtle changes in heat transport, inferred pressures that don't quite settle, noise that refuses to average out cleanly. What once looked like observational error may turn out to be planetary weather on a scale we've never observed before. This is where Proxima B becomes unsettling. Because a variable atmosphere is not just hostile, it is dynamic. And dynamic systems are where complexity lives. But complexity under stress does not announce itself with comfort. It announces itself with irregularity. Webb is sensitive enough to detect that irregularity, if it exists. And if it does, then the idea of habitability shifts again. Life would not be thriving in equilibrium. It would be riding cycles, retreating during flares, re-emerging during calm, living in refuges underground, underwater, under ice timing its expansion to windows of opportunity. That is not science fiction. That is how life behaves on Earth during mass extinctions. Proxima B may be an extinction-prone world where survival, not dominance, is the metric of success. If so, Webb's difficulty in pinning it down is not a failure of instrumentation. It is a reflection of reality. Unstable worlds do not leave clean signatures. They leave noise. And learning to read noise is the next phase of exoplanet science. This is why Proxima B feels like a threshold. Not because it will deliver a headline, but because it is the first planet to force us to admit that the old categories habitable or not, Earth-like or not, are too blunt to survive contact with real diversity. James Webb is not finding Earths. It is finding gradients of survivability. Proxima B sits near the knife edge of that gradient. And knife edges are where theories go to be sharpened or discarded. There is also a quiet emotional reversal happening. For decades, proximity implied hope. Mars, Europa, Enceladus, nearby worlds where we could send machines, drill ice, touch material. Proxima B inverts that logic. It is close enough to haunt us, but far enough to deny intervention. We cannot save it. We cannot seed it. We cannot ruin it. Whatever Proxima B is, it is that on its own terms. And that forces a strange respect. Because for the first time, we are confronting a potentially habitable world that is completely outside human influence, not just practically, but philosophically. It exists beyond our ethical reach, beyond our capacity to alter. We are not participants. We are observers, and observers must learn restraint. James Webb is a restraint machine. It slows discovery. It stretches timelines. It replaces dramatic moments with long arcs. It rewards consistency over brilliance. Proxima B, in turn, rewards humility. If it is dead, it will teach us that even proximity and abundance do not guarantee life. If it is alive or merely stable, it will teach us that endurance can outcompete gentleness. Either way, the lesson is uncomfortable and necessary, because we are entering an era where we will detect hundreds of Earth-sized planets in habitable zones without Proxima B as calibration. Those detections would inflate hope dangerously fast. Webb is ensuring that hope grows under load, under constraint, under friction. This is not pessimism. This is inoculation. Proxima B is inoculating us against naive optimism before the data flood arrives. And that may be its greatest gift. Because the universe is not sparse, it is structured, and structure is only visible when you resist the urge to fill gaps with desire. James Webb resists. Relentlessly. It does not care what we want Proxima B to be. It only cares what thermal physics, atmospheric chemistry, and orbital mechanics allow. And those allowances are narrow. Narrow enough that even partial answers reshape our worldview. Already, Proxima B has done something extraordinary. It has made the nearest star system feel morally neutral. Not promising, not threatening, just real. Reality is harder to sell than wonder, but it lasts longer. And lasting is the theme that keeps returning. Red dwarfs last. Atmospheres that survive them last. Life that adapts to them, if it exists, lasts. We are the brief ones. Webb's observations of Proxima B are a reminder that the universe's clock is not synchronized to ours, that meaningful processes unfold over millions of years, that our desire for closure is a local artifact, not a cosmic priority. Proxima B does not care if we resolve it in a decade or a century. It will keep orbiting. Webb will keep listening. And between those two continuities, something slow and powerful is happening. We are learning to accept that knowledge does not always arrive as revelation. Sometimes it arrives as a narrowing corridor that you walk down for years, removing one false door at a time. That corridor is where Proxima B lives. Not as a destination, as a discipline in how to think about other worlds without projecting ourselves onto them. a discipline in how to stay curious without demanding payoff, a discipline in how to let the universe be difficult without turning away. James Webb did not promise us answers about Proxima B. It promised us access to reality at the edge of inference. And Proxima B is delivering on that promise not by telling us what it is, but by forcing us to become the kind of observers who can handle what it might be. That transformation is quiet. It is slow, but it is irreversible. And long after Proxima B's specific details are revised, refined, or overturned, that shift in how we relate to nearby worlds will remain. We're no longer just looking for life. We are learning how to look at worlds that owe us nothing. And that may be the most important preparation of all. By now, the planet has done something irreversible. It has detached discovery from reward. Proxima B no longer feels like a prize waiting to be opened. It feels like a system we must earn the right to understand. And that shift, subtle, uncomfortable, is exactly what James Webb was built to force. Because Webb is not generous with conclusions, it is generous with discipline. Every observing campaign aimed at Proxima B is an exercise in restraint. Time on Webb is scarce. Every hour is competed for by galaxies, star nurseries, dying suns. To point it again and again at a faint red star 4 light-years away is a declaration this problem matters enough to be patient with. And patience changes the kind of science we do. Instead of hunting signatures that confirm belief, we test scenarios that could falsify them. Could a bare rock produce this signal? Could stellar variability fake that curve? Could instrumental drift masquerade as heat transport? Most of the time, the answer is yes. And that is the point. Because Proxima B is not teaching us how to confirm life. It is teaching us how to avoid fooling ourselves. This is not a small lesson. Astronomy is littered with ghosts, false canals on Mars, mistaken oxygen detections, signals later traced to noise. Webb is designed to exorcise those ghosts before they take hold. Proxima B is the proving ground. Here, every claim must survive brutal scrutiny. Every hint must persist across datasets, instruments, epochs. The star's flares must be modelled. The detector's quirks must be understood. The planet's orbital phase must line up again and again. If a signal survives all that, it earns attention. Not belief. Attention. And attention, sustained over time, is what eventually turns into knowledge. There is another boundary Proxima B exposes, one that is less discussed but deeply consequential, the boundary between science and story. Humans need narrative. We need beginnings, middles, ends. Webb offers none of that. Proxima B has no reveal moment, no now we know timestamp. Its story unfolds as a tightening spiral, not a straight line. This frustrates audiences, it frustrates funding agencies, it frustrates even scientists. But it is honest. And honesty, here, has a cost. It means accepting that we may spend decades observing Proxima B and still never know whether life exists there. That some questions are asymptotic, they can be approached indefinitely without being reached. This is not failure. It is the nature of remote inquiry, and learning to accept that nature is part of becoming a mature, spacefaring intelligence. Because the universe is not built for closure, it is built for continuity. Proxima B embodies that continuity. It has been orbiting for billions of years. It will orbit for billions more. Our brief window of observation is a blink inside that endurance. James Webb gives us that blink at unprecedented resolution. But a blink is still a blink. What we do with it reveals who we are. There is also a quiet recalibration happening in how we think about significance. For much of modern astronomy, significance was tied to rarity the biggest, the brightest, the farthest. Proxima B is none of those. It is small, dim, ordinary in mass, extraordinary only in proximity. And yet it commands outsized attention. Because significance is shifting from spectacle to representativeness. Proxima B is significant because it is likely typical, a rocky planet around a red dwarf, close in, tidally locked, battered but persistent. If we want to understand the galaxy we actually live in, not the one we wish for, this is the terrain we must learn to read. Webb is teaching us that lesson through discomfort. Every ambiguous result, every constrained non-detection, every limit placed on imagination is a step toward realism. Realism does not kill wonder. It deepens it. Because wonder grounded in reality lasts longer than wonder fueled by fantasy. And Proxima B is forcing our wonder to grow roots. There is a human vulnerability threaded through all of this. We are fragile creatures trying to infer other worlds from photons that barely reach us. Our instruments are exquisite, but they are still approximations. Our models are powerful, but they are still simplifications. Proxima B reminds us of that fragility. Not cruelly, calmly. It does not mock our efforts. It simply does not adjust itself to our needs. And that is oddly reassuring, because it means the universe is not performative. It is not tailored for observers. It exists regardless. Meaning then is something we construct in response, not something the universe hands us. James Webb helps us construct meaning responsibly, by refusing to lie, by refusing to simplify beyond what physics allows, by refusing to turn proximity into promise. As we continue to observe Proxima B, something else becomes inevitable. This will not be the last planet like this. Webb is already identifying similar worlds around nearby red dwarfs. Each will come with its own constraints, its own ambiguity, its own resistance to narrative closure. Proxima B is just the first to force us to adapt, to slow down, to trade excitement spikes for long arcs, to value exclusion as much as detection. This is the emotional training ground for the next century of planetary science. And training is rarely comfortable, but it is necessary. Because if life is rare, we must not hallucinate it, and if life is common, we must not cheapen it by declaring victory too early. Proxima B sits exactly between those dangers. James Webb keeps it there. Balanced, unresolved, alive as a question. And that may be the most honest state a nearby world can occupy. Not a yes, not a no, but a constraint that forces us to think better, argue cleaner, imagine responsibly. In the end, Proxima B is not asking us whether we are alone. It is asking us whether we are patient enough to find out, whether we can sustain curiosity without guarantee, whether we can accept that the nearest answers may still be partial, conditional, and slow. James Webb is betting that we will keep listening, that we will keep refining, that we will allow reality to be complex without turning away. And Proxima B, circling its restless star, continues to offer the same quiet challenge with every orbit. Learn how to know without touching. So far, we are still trying. And that effort ongoing, unresolved, disciplined is already a form of success. Because it marks the moment when humanity stopped demanding the universe explain itself quickly, and started learning how to listen for as long as it takes. By the 11th movement, the story is no longer about telescopes or planets. It's about scale, and what happens to the human mind when scale refuses to cooperate with instinct. Proxima B is close enough to feel personal, yet governed by forces so large and slow that personal intuition collapses on contact. This is the paradox James Webb exposes. We evolve to understand landscapes we can walk, storms we can outrun, days we can count. Proxima B operates on a different register. Its storms are stellar, its days are permanent, its climate, if it exists, is shaped by forces that do not care about comfort, symmetry, or rhythm. And yet, Webb keeps translating that extremity into something we can almost feel. Not see, not touch, feel. When Webb measures thermal emission from Proxima B, what it is really measuring is imbalance. Energy arriving versus energy escaping. That difference is the heartbeat of any climate system. On Earth, we experience it as weather. On Proxima B, It could be the difference between an atmosphere that circulates and one that collapses. This is not abstract. If heat cannot move efficiently from day to night, gases will freeze out on the dark side. Atmospheres don't die explosively. They migrate, they condense, they quietly vanish. Webb is sensitive to that quiet. If Proxima B's night side is too cold, too dark in infrared, then the planet is likely bleeding atmosphere into permanent ice. If the night side glows warmer than expected, something is moving heat air, ocean, or both. That single distinction movement versus stagnation is everything. Because movement is life's oldest ally. Movement mixes chemicals, spreads energy, prevents local catastrophes from becoming global ends. A planet that moves heat is a planet that resists extremes. Webb can't tell us if Proxima B resists enough, but it can tell us if resistance exists at all. And that's a profound shift from speculation to diagnosis. There is also a quieter scale. Webb is forcing us to confront timescale mismatch. Proxima B's year is 11 Earth days. Its climate cycles, however, may unfold over tens of thousands of years. Stellar activity cycles over centuries. Atmospheric loss or recovery over millions. We observe for years. We infer for eons. That gap is dangerous if we're careless and powerful if we're disciplined. Webb demands discipline. It forces us to ask not what is happening now, but what must have been happening long enough to produce what we see. That backward reasoning is where deep understanding lives. If Proxima B has an atmosphere today, then it survived its star's violent youth. That means shielding, replenishment, or sheer mass mattered more than pessimists assumed. If it doesn't, then stellar violence may be a near-universal eraser for close-in rocky worlds. Either outcome reshapes how we think about the galaxy. And the galaxy is not small. There are tens of billions of red dwarfs in the Milky Way, each potentially hosting multiple planets. Proxima B is not a curiosity, it is a representative. A single data point, yes, but one with enormous leverage. James Webb gives that data point weight by stripping away excuses. We can no longer say we don't know because we can't look. We are looking, carefully, repeatedly, honestly. What remains unknown after that is real uncertainty, not ignorance. And real uncertainty is productive. It narrows imagination rather than inflating it. This is where the emotional arc deepens rather than resolves. There is no crescendo coming, no dramatic reveal. Instead, there is a slow settling into a more mature relationship with the unknown. Proxima B is teaching us how to coexist with partial knowledge without turning away. That skill will matter far beyond astronomy. Because the future of climate, of technology, of intelligence itself will not present us with clean answers either. It will present us with constraints, probabilities, trade-offs. Webb's work on Proxima B is rehearsal for that reality. Learning to act, think, and plan in the presence of incomplete information. Learning to resist both despair and overconfidence. Learning to keep watching. There is also a quiet emotional inversion happening here. For centuries, the stars represented destiny, guidance, myth. Proxima B brings them back to something colder but more honest. The universe is not a narrative engine designed for us. It is a system. Systems do not care, but systems can be understood. And understanding even partial changes how we see ourselves. We are no longer the centre. We are a probe species, a species that extends perception outward and accepts whatever comes back, even when it doesn't flatter us. Proxima B is the nearest test of that identity. If we can handle ambiguity here, we can handle it anywhere. James Webb, silent and tireless, keeps returning to the same faint red star, collecting photons that carry no intention, no message, only consequence. It is up to us to assemble those consequences into meaning without distorting them. That is harder than discovery. It requires restraint. And restraint is not something civilizations are known for. Yet here we are, waiting, observing, letting the planet remain unresolved without forcing a conclusion. That alone is progress. Because the universe is vast, and we are at the beginning of learning how to listen without demanding it speak our language. Proxima B will not resolve into a verdict, but it is resolving us slowly into a species capable of patience at cosmic scale. And that may be the most important transformation of all. By the 12th turn, we stop pretending that resolution is the goal. Proxima B has stripped that illusion away piece by piece. What remains is something stranger and more durable, a sustained relationship with the unknown. This is not suspense. Suspense implies payoff. This is endurance. James Webb was never meant to deliver answers quickly. It was built to sit with questions longer than human attention spans normally allow. Proxima B is the first nearby world to fully activate that design philosophy. It asks not for excitement, but for stamina. And stamina changes the shape of curiosity. Instead of spiking and fading, attention stretches. It settles into long arcs. Data accumulates not as moments, but as weight. Each observation adds pressure, slowly compressing the space of what can be true. This is how reality reveals itself when spectacle is removed. What Webb is doing now, quietly, methodically, is establishing whether Proxima B occupies a stable basin or a transient state. Is this planet in equilibrium, or is it caught in a slow collapse that we just happen to witness midstream? That distinction matters enormously. A planet in equilibrium implies self-regulation, feedback loops, processes that dampen extremes. A planet in collapse implies inevitability loss that no short-term observation can reverse. Webb cannot watch Proxima B for 1,000,000 years, but it can ask whether the present moment is consistent with long-term stability. If thermal patterns are steady across years, stability becomes likely. If they drift, fluctuate, refuse to settle, instability enters the frame. This is not dramatic. It is decisive. Because stable systems can host complexity. Unstable ones can only host transient experiments. Life, if present, chooses stability. And Proxima B may be telling us quietly whether it offers that choice. There is also a subtle reframing of distance happening again here. 4 light-years is close enough that Proxima B feels like a neighbour, but the information we receive from it is ancient. Not geologically ancient, but culturally. That light left before history. We are always seeing Proxima B in the past. Not because it matters for habitability, but because it matters for humility. We are responding to a world that does not know we exist. A world that has not changed its behaviour in response to our curiosity. It does not become clearer because we are watching. It does not reveal itself because we want it to. It remains what it is. That asymmetry matters. Because it reminds us that knowledge is not a conversation. It is an extraction careful, indirect, and limited by physics. James Webb is extracting meaning from scarcity. And scarcity sharpens value. Every bit of information about Proxima B is expensive, in time, in attention, in opportunity cost, and because it is expensive, it is treated with care. This is how science matures, not when it accelerates, but when it slows enough to respect what it is measuring. Proxima B demands that respect. It is not forgiving of sloppy interpretation. It does not allow shortcuts. It does not reward enthusiasm without rigour. And in return, it offers something rare, a chance to learn how planets actually behave under extreme but common conditions. Not idealised conditions. Not Earth conditions. Common ones. Red dwarfs dominate the galaxy. Close-in rocky planets dominate red dwarf systems. Proxima B is not an outlier, it is the rule made visible. James Webb's greatest contribution here may be psychological rather than technical. It is forcing us to accept that the universe we live in is not optimized for us. Habitability, if it exists widely, is likely hard-won, not abundant by default. This does not make life meaningless. It makes it precious. And precision in how we talk about it becomes ethical, not just scientific. Because overstating habitability cheapens life, declaring worlds alive without evidence turns awe into noise. Webb's restraint is a kind of respect for the phenomenon of life itself. Proxima B benefits from that restraint. It remains open, not exploited for narrative closure, not forced into a role, just allowed to exist as a constraint that sharpens thought. And thought, sharpened over time, changes culture. Already, the language around exoplanets is shifting. Less hype, more probability, less Earth-like, more Earth-sized, less fantasy, more process. Proxima B is a catalyst for that shift. Not by giving us answers, by denying us easy ones. There is something quietly courageous about that. We live in a culture that rewards immediacy. Proxima B rewards patience. Webb rewards those willing to wait, refine, and revise. This is not a popular form of wonder, but it is a durable one. It does not burn out. It does not collapse when expectations aren't met. It sustains itself on constraint and curiosity rather than promise. As Webb continues to watch Proxima B, the planet becomes less mysterious in one sense and more mysterious in another. We rule out extremes, we narrow possibilities, but the remaining possibilities feel deeper, more consequential. Not is there life, but what does survival look like under relentless pressure? Not is this world like ours, but how many ways can a world remain organized in a universe that constantly tries to tear it apart? Those are better questions. Harder. More honest. And Proxima B is forcing us to ask them sooner than we expected. The nearest star system could have been boring. It wasn't. It could have been a clear dead end. It isn't. It could have been an easy win. It refused. Instead, it gave us a world that sits exactly at the boundary of our ability to know close enough to tempt, far enough to resist, harsh enough to challenge optimism, stable enough to challenge pessimism. James Webb did not choose Proxima B. Reality did. And reality chose well. Because this planet is not a distraction. It is a training ground. A place where a young technological civilization learns how to handle ambiguity without retreating into myth or despair. Where attention is sustained without reward. Where curiosity matures into discipline. Proxima B will not resolve cleanly, but it will continue to shape us. And perhaps that is the deeper pattern emerging here, not just about planets, but about intelligence itself. That intelligence grows not by conquering uncertainty, but by learning how to live inside it without blinking. James Webb keeps listening. Proxima B keeps orbiting. And somewhere between those two motions, a new relationship with the cosmos is quietly locking into place, one defined not by answers, but by endurance. That relationship is not finished, but it is finally stable enough to carry us forward. By the 13th stretch, the tension has shifted again, not forward, not toward resolution, inward, toward meaning that no longer depends on outcome. Proxima B has done what only the hardest questions can do. It has changed the shape of our curiosity. We no longer lean toward it asking, "What are you?" We lean toward it asking, "What are we becoming by watching you this way?" Because James Webb has turned Proxima B into a discipline of attention, a sustained act of care directed at something that may never reward us with certainty, and that act maintained across years, institutions, generations is not accidental. It is cultural. Civilizations reveal themselves not by what they conquer, but by what they are willing to observe without control. Proxima B is completely beyond our control. We cannot intervene. We cannot accelerate discovery. We cannot force disclosure. We can only continue to look honestly. And honesty, here, means accepting a possibility that would once have felt intolerable, that the nearest potentially habitable planet may remain ambiguous forever. Not unknown. Ambiguous. That difference matters. Unknown implies ignorance waiting to be erased. Ambiguity implies limits that persist even as knowledge grows. Proxima B is teaching us that some truths do not resolve into binary outcomes. They resolve into constrained ranges that never collapse into a single answer. That is a new cognitive terrain for humanity. James Webb is dragging us into it. And Proxima B is the anchor. As more observations accumulate, the space of plausible worlds shrinks. Entire climate regimes vanish. Certain atmospheric pressures become untenable. Specific heat transport models stop matching reality. The planet becomes less anything and more something, but that something may still be plural. A world that could be this or that, but definitely not those. That may be the most precise form of knowledge we ever get. And precision without finality is not a flaw. It is a property of complex systems observed at a distance. We accept this readily in other domains. Climate projections do not give us a single future, they give us ranges. Economic forecasts do not promise outcomes, they map possibilities. Medicine does not guarantee cures, it shifts probabilities. Proxima B is forcing astronomy to join that maturity curve, not by theory, by necessity. Because even James Webb, the most powerful space telescope ever built, cannot turn this planet into a photograph. It cannot make proximity behave like intimacy. It cannot make physics bend to narrative desire. And that refusal is shaping us. There is a quiet dignity in that. It means our relationship with the universe is no longer transactional. We do not demand answers in exchange for attention. We give attention because understanding partial, constrained, slow is valuable in itself. That is not how young civilizations think. It is how enduring ones begin to. Proxima B sits at the boundary between those modes. The planet itself does nothing dramatic. It does not flare. It does not pulse. It does not announce. It simply continues, orbit after orbit, under a star that occasionally lashes out but mostly burns steadily in red light. That steadiness, ironically, is the most destabilizing thing of all. Because it means there is time. Time for chemistry to iterate, time for systems to adapt, time for rare arrangements to occur, dissolve, and occur again. Time is life's greatest ally. And red dwarfs offer more of it than any other stellar type in the universe. This is where Proxima B quietly threatens our old intuitions again. If this planet is stable now, if it has weathered the worst of its star's youth, then it may be entering the longest calm of its existence. A calm that could last trillions of years. A calm that dwarfs Earth's future window of habitability. We are used to thinking of ourselves as early. Proxima B suggests we may be late. Late to a universe where the longest-lived habitats are only just beginning to settle into equilibrium. James Webb cannot confirm that future, but it has made it structurally plausible. And plausibility is enough to reorder priorities. If the universe favours longevity over gentleness, then life elsewhere may not look like us because it did not need to. It evolved under rules that reward persistence, not comfort. Proxima B is the first nearby arena where that idea stops being speculative. It is not proof. It is pressure. Pressure on anthropocentrism. Pressure on Earth-centric habitability. Pressure on the idea that familiarity is a prerequisite for life. Webb applies that pressure methodically, photon by photon, and under pressure, weak ideas fracture. The idea that habitability is obvious fractures. The idea that proximity equals accessibility fractures. The idea that discovery must be spectacular fractures. What remains is something leaner and stronger. A framework where knowledge is earned slowly, uncertainty is tolerated, and meaning is not contingent on emotional payoff. This is not a glamorous vision of science. It is a resilient one. Proxima B is not inspiring us with beauty. It is inspiring us with endurance. And endurance is a deeper form of awe, because it forces us to confront how rare sustained organization really is in a universe dominated by entropy. A planet that remains structured under constant assault is not boring. It is defiant. Even if it is lifeless. Even if it is silent. even if it never rewards our attention with confirmation, there is something almost ethical about continuing to observe under those conditions. It signals that we value truth even when it does not comfort us, that we are willing to invest attention without guaranteed return. That is not how curiosity usually works. But it is how wisdom begins. James Webb, in its long orbit far from Earth, embodies that posture. It does not rush, it does not react, it does not care about headlines, it keeps collecting light and letting patterns emerge at their own pace. Proxima B, in turn, keeps offering the same quiet lesson, that the universe is not obliged to be legible, friendly, or rewarding, but it is consistent, and consistency is enough. Enough to build understanding, and enough to sustain curiosity, enough to justify patience. We are not nearing an ending. We are nearing a settling. A point where the question of Proxima B no longer agitates, but stabilizes, becoming part of our long-term cognitive landscape, rather than a problem to be solved. And that is the mark of a mature inquiry. Not closure, integration. Proxima B is being integrated into our worldview not as a destination or a beacon, but as a reference, a world that anchors how we think about extremes, endurance, and the limits of knowing. James Webb has already succeeded here, not by telling us what Proxima B is, but by teaching us how to stay with a question long enough that it reshapes us. And that reshaping, once it begins, does not reverse. We will never again look at nearby stars as empty dots. We will never again assume habitability as obvious. We will never again mistake closeness for clarity. Proxima B has closed those doors quietly, without drama, and in doing so, it has opened a deeper one into a universe that demands patience, humility, and endurance from those who wish to understand it. We are stepping through that door now, not quickly, not confidently, but steadily, and that may be the most honest way a civilization can approach the unknown. By the 14th passage, something almost paradoxical has happened. The unknown has stopped feeling like a gap and started feeling like a structure. Proxima B is no longer a blank space on our mental map. It is a defined region with edges, pressures, and rules. We don't know what fills it completely, but we know where it cannot extend. And that changes everything. Because uncertainty with boundaries is not paralysis, it is orientation. James Webb has oriented us. It has taken a planet that once existed only as a mass estimate and an orbital period, and turned it into a constrained physical system. We now speak about Proxima B in terms of energy budgets, atmospheric retention, stellar histories, magnetic shielding, geological persistence. These are not guesses, they are negotiations with physics. Negotiations that leave marks. The more we negotiate, the less romantic the planet becomes and the more consequential it feels. Romance fades under constraint. Significance does not. Proxima B is significant because it has become unavoidable. Any serious discussion of habitability around red dwarfs must pass through it. Any claim about life's resilience must confront its conditions. Any future telescope designed to probe nearby Earth-sized worlds will be benchmarked, explicitly or implicitly, against what Proxima B taught us. It is already shaping the future without revealing its own present. That is a strange kind of influence. But it mirrors how the universe often works. Causes do not announce themselves. They propagate quietly, altering trajectories long before outcomes are visible. Proxima B is such a cause, and James Webb is the amplifier that made it unavoidable. There is a subtle emotional shift that comes with this realization. Early curiosity asked, could this be another Earth now? The question feels naive. The better question is, what kinds of worlds does the universe actually permit to endure? Endurance has replaced similarity as the metric. That shift is irreversible, because endurance forces us to respect environments we would never choose. Worlds locked in eternal daylight, worlds battered by radiation, worlds that survive not because they are gentle, but because they are stubborn. Proxima B is stubborn or it is not, and Webb is helping us determine which. If it has retained an atmosphere, that stubbornness is real. If it has not, then the universe has drawn a line more sharply than we hoped. Either way, the lesson holds. The universe is not optimized for familiarity. It is optimized for consistency. And consistency does not care whether we are comfortable with the outcome. This is why Proxima B feels like a turning point in exoplanet science, even without discovery. It is forcing us to accept that the most important planets may not be the most welcoming ones. They may be the ones that survive the longest, under conditions we instinctively reject. James Webb is making that survival visible. Not through images, through absence. Absence of dramatic temperature swings, absence of runaway extremes, absence of signals that would imply rapid collapse. Or perhaps the absence of buffering telling us that collapse already happened long ago. Both absences are informative. This is the strange power of negative space in science. What is not seen constrains what must have been true over long spans of time. Proxima B's current state, whatever it is, reflects billions of years of interaction with its star. Webb is not seeing a snapshot. It is seeing the residue of history. And history leaves fingerprints that cannot be erased easily. That is why this planet matters far beyond its size. It compresses stellar evolution, planetary geology, atmospheric chemistry, and deep time into a single test case we can interrogate repeatedly. Most planets like this are too far away. Proxima B is close enough to be relentless. We can keep returning, keep refining, keep squeezing uncertainty until it yields structure. And that persistence is itself a kind of intelligence test. Not for the planet, for us. Are we capable of caring about something that does not resolve into triumph or tragedy? Can we maintain attention without emotional spikes? Can we let meaning emerge slowly, without forcing it into narrative shape too early? Proxima B is asking those questions silently. James Webb is asking them procedurally. Every observing cycle is a recommitment, a decision to keep spending time, money, attention on a question that may never collapse into certainty. That decision signals something important about who we are becoming. We are transitioning from explorers seeking landmarks to surveyors mapping terrains we may never cross. That is a quieter role, but it is a more durable one, because the universe is not a sequence of destinations. It is a field of constraints, and learning to live among constraints rather than fantasizing about exceptions is how civilizations mature. Proxima B is not special because it might host life. It is special because it is forcing us to accept that life, if it exists widely, may do so under conditions that do not flatter us. Conditions that reward patience, not brilliance. Conditions that favour persistence, not speed. Conditions that operate on timescales far longer than our own stories. James Webb is aligned with those conditions. It is not fast. It is not flashy. It is precise, slow, and unforgiving of error. That alignment matters, because it means the instrument and the question are matched. Proxima B is not being interrogated by a device built for spectacle. It is being listened to by one built for endurance. And endurance is the only way to approach a universe this old. As we approach the final stretch of this inquiry, something stabilizes, not an answer, but a posture. We are no longer trying to extract a verdict from Proxima B. We are letting it occupy its rightful place as a reference point. A boundary case. A world that defines what is hard, what is possible, and what remains unknowable even under ideal observation. That alone is enough to reshape a field, and it already has. Future missions will be designed differently because of Proxima B. Models will be more cautious, claims more restrained, expectations more realistic. That is progress. Not because it brings us closer to life, but because it brings us closer to truth. And truth, in a universe like this, is not loud. It does not announce itself. It accumulates. James Webb is accumulating it now. Proxima B is supplying the resistance that makes accumulation meaningful. And as we prepare to step into the final movement of this story, one thing is clear. We are no longer waiting for Proxima B to tell us what it is. We are watching ourselves learn how to coexist with a question that refuses to resolve, and finding that this coexistence does not weaken curiosity. It strengthens it. Because curiosity that survives without payoff is no longer driven by reward. It is driven by respect. And respect, once established at cosmic scale, does not fade. It becomes the foundation for everything that comes next. At the end of this long orbit around a single, stubborn world, something resolves not into an answer, but into a feeling that does not need one. Proxima B no longer sits in our imagination as a question mark. It sits as a landmark, a fixed point around which our understanding has rearranged itself. We began by wanting to know what James Webb could tell us about Proxima B. We end by realizing what Proxima B has already told us about ourselves. This planet, so close and yet unreachable, has forced us to confront the limits of vision without collapsing into disappointment. It has taught us that knowing is not the same as possessing, that proximity does not imply intimacy, that the universe does not reward curiosity with convenience. And still we watched. For years we watched. A faint red star, a barely detectable planetary signal, heat that may move or may not, an atmosphere that may endure or may already be gone. No revelation, no collapse, just accumulation. And in that accumulation, something quietly completed itself. James Webb did not give us a verdict on Proxima B because the universe does not operate on verdicts. It operates on conditions, on thresholds, on what survives repeated stress without breaking. Proxima B is a stress test. Not only for planets, but for civilizations learning how to ask questions at interstellar scale. What Webb can tell us, with honesty and restraint, is this: Proxima B is not an illusion. It is not a fantasy projection. It is a real world shaped by forces we understand well enough to respect, and not well enough to dominate. It exists within narrow corridors carved by radiation, gravity, chemistry, and time. It either endured those corridors or it didn't. And that distinction matters enormously, even if it never resolves cleanly. Because if Proxima B endured, then endurance itself is a common cosmic strategy. Life, if it arises, may not need gentle suns or Earth-like rhythms. It may need patience, protection, and time, vast time. If Proxima B failed, then the universe has drawn a harder line than we hoped. A line that tells us survival near red dwarfs is rarer, more conditional, more selective. Either way, the universe has spoken clearly enough. Not in words, in constraints. And constraints are the most honest language reality has. As we zoom out now past Proxima Centauri, past its companion stars, past the local bubble of nearby suns the Milky Way fills the frame, hundreds of billions of stars, most of them red dwarfs, most of them older than the sun, most of them hosting planets we have not yet learned how to read. Proxima B is no longer special because it is close. It is special because it taught us how hard close still is. It recalibrated our expectations before the flood of discoveries arrives. It trained us to value exclusion over excitement, patience over spectacle, endurance over familiarity. That training will matter, because the next decades will bring thousands of Earth-sized planets in habitable zones, and without Proxima B, we would have mistaken abundance for accessibility, detection for understanding, possibility for promise. Proxima B closed that door gently before we could run headlong into it. And in doing so, it opened a deeper one. A way of relating to the universe that does not demand reassurance. A way of watching that does not require reward. A way of knowing that accepts incompleteness without turning away. James Webb embodies that posture, silent, precise, unemotional, orbiting far from Earth, listening without expectation. It does not celebrate, it does not despair, it records. And Proxima B, orbiting its restless star every 11 days, offers the same discipline in return. It does not reveal itself for our benefit. It does not simplify. It just continues. That continuation is the final message. In a universe where entropy dominates, where stars flare and worlds freeze and systems collapse, continuation is never trivial. A planet that persists long enough to be studied at all is already remarkable. A civilization that learns to respect that persistence without projecting fantasies onto it is rarer still. We are becoming that civilization. Slowly. Unevenly. But unmistakably. Proxima B will not become a second Earth in our stories. It will not become a home, a destination, or a salvation. It has become something more durable, a reference point for maturity. A reminder that the universe is not designed to comfort us, but it is structured enough to be understood, if we are willing to meet it on its terms. We are small in this story. But we are included. Included not because the universe favours us, but because we have learned how to listen without demanding it speak back. James Webb has shown us what can be known. Proxima B has shown us what cannot. And between those two truths, a complete emotional arc closes not with triumph, not with despair, but with something steadier. Awe without illusion, curiosity without urgency, meaning without guarantee. That is enough. Enough to share, enough to carry forward, enough to stand under a night sky, look toward a faint red star you cannot see, and feel connected not because you understand everything there, but because you now understand how to keep asking without breaking the question. Proxima B does not answer us. It completes us. And that, quietly, is where the journey ends.